They say some betrayals happen in silence. Mine arrived behind a gate in Los Angeles, dressed in designer loafers. I had walked 3 miles in the heat to surprise my only child, carrying a handmade quilt sewn from the fabric of his childhood. What I found was a stranger, and what he said to me at that gate cut deeper than any knife. But the real sting? It came after, when I saw who he called Mama on national television. They say the sun in Los Angeles doesn't care who it burns. That day it sure as hell didn't care about me. I'd been walking for almost an hour, just shy of 3 miles in a late September heat wave. The kind of dry metallic heat that makes the sidewalk shimmer like it's boiling. My blouse stuck to my back, and my bra strap had already rubbed a raw spot near my shoulder blade. But I didn't stop. I was 69 years old. A widow. A retired seamstress from a Kentucky town small enough that folks still left casseroles on porches when someone died. But here I was in the land of avocado toast and Teslas, dodging scooters and judgmental stares, clutching a quilt like a lifeline. It wasn't just any quilt. I made it from my son's old clothes, the little pieces I saved in a trunk for someday, the faded Star Wars t-shirt he wore until the sleeves frayed, the strip from his first pair of overalls, the soft flannel I used to wrap around him during his fevers. I stitched every panel by hand, even though my fingers aren't what they used to be. The arthritis makes it slow, but that just made it more sacred. Graham used to love my quilts. When he was little, he used to burrow into them like a puppy and fall asleep under the hum of my sewing machine. When he got older and moved away, I mailed one to his college dorm. He never mentioned it. But this quilt, this one was for remembering. The gated neighborhood he lived in didn't allow pedestrians through the main drive, so I had to walk the long way around. Past the yoga studios and the luxury boutiques, past the silent Teslas gliding down the street like sharks. When I finally reached his house, a sleek modern glass and steel fortress perched in the hills, I felt like I was standing in front of a spaceship. I pressed the intercom button. Static hissed, followed by a clipped female voice. Yes. My name's Ruth. Ruth Devereux. I'm Graham's mother. Silence. More static. Then, one moment. I waited. The gates didn't open. No buzz, no click, no welcome. Just the faint sound of wind chimes from a neighbor's porch, and the lonely hum of traffic far below. And then he appeared. He walked out from the side of the house, casual as a summer breeze, like he wasn't expecting anything more dramatic than a landscaping update. Khaki pants. Crisp white shirt. Designer sunglasses. His hair was short now, neat, not the messy cowlick he used to curse in the mirror when he was a teenager. He looked good. Rich good. Magazine cover good. And completely unfamiliar. Ruth. That's what he called me. Not mom. Not even mother. Just Ruth. Hi, baby, I said, forcing a smile through the dryness in my throat. He didn't smile back. What are you doing here? I held up the quilt. I made something for you. It's from your... No, you can't just show up here like this. His voice wasn't loud. That almost made it worse. Calm, firm, rehearsed. Like he'd practiced this moment in his head and had the lines memorized. I just wanted to see you, I whispered. It's been so long and... Do you realize what you're doing? There are cameras. Press. I have clients watching my feed. This isn't okay. My arms, still holding the quilt, began to tremble. I'm not trying to ruin anything. It's G now, he cut in. Not Graham. For branding. Branding. I stood there, stunned, on the other side of a steel gate, holding a blanket made from memories, while my son told me my presence was bad for business. I came a long way, I said quietly. He looked past me, not at me. Not really. Like he was scanning for photographers for damage control. You need to go. Please. Just go. And don't do this again. He turned and walked away. That was it. I didn't cry. Not yet. I didn't beg. I didn't ask to be let in. I just turned, clutching that bundle like it was the only thing tethering me to the sidewalk, and walked away. Just across the street I found a coffee shop. I sat by the window with a sweating glass of iced tea. The air conditioning hit me hard, almost violently, and I let it. The quilt sat in my lap like a sleeping pet. I stared out the window, watching the front of his mansion. I don't know what I expected. Regret? A change of heart? Someone to come running out and say it was a mistake? Instead, a black SUV pulled up. Camera crew got out. 2 guys with boom mics. A woman with a clipboard and headset. Then Graham G. emerged from the house in a different shirt, hair touched up, smile camera ready. And then came her. She was tall, regal, dressed in soft pastels and pearl earrings. Black, probably in her late 50s. She walked with a calm, grounded grace like she'd always belonged beside him. And this? I heard Graham say as the boom mic swung toward them. This is Monica. She's the woman who raised me. My mama. Without her I wouldn't be here today. The reporter smiled. The cameraman zoomed in. And me? I just sat there, staring, not blinking, not breathing. Something inside me broke, but not like a plate or a bone. Broke like a dam. And the water behind it wasn't tears. It was fire. You ever sit in a cafe with a heart so heavy you forget how to chew? That's what I did for almost 2 hours, watching the front of Graham's mansion like a child staring through the glass of a candy store. Except the candy had my last name. And the glass was bulletproof. The first thing I noticed was how easy he made it look. The crew didn't swarm him like paparazzi. No, this was scheduled, controlled, curated. They didn't knock on his door. He walked out to meet them, perfectly timed, like he was stepping onto a stage. I watched through the glass with that same quilt still in my lap, my fingers tracing the stitches on the corner square. His baby onesie, the yellow one with the little ducks. His favorite. And then she stepped out beside him. Monica. He introduced her like she was a blessing. The woman who raised me, he said with a little catch in his voice that made the young production assistant wipe a tear from her eye. She taught me everything. She taught me to be strong. She taught me grace. And after I lost my mother to cancer when I was 11, Monica became the light in my life. My stomach flipped. My throat went dry. Cancer? When I was 11. He said it so smoothly I almost believed it. Almost. And then Monica smiled. Not a fake smile. A deep, practiced one. Like she'd told this story before, and maybe even come to believe it. She laid a hand on his shoulder, soft and maternal. I watched him lean into it like he needed it to survive. It was surreal. Like watching a movie of your own life rewritten by a stranger. They called it a documentary short. A branded feature for a campaign called Structures of Resilience. Sponsored by some luxury home brand with a name that sounded like imported soap, Velour or Volusia or something equally ridiculous. He gave them a walking tour of the property while Monica talked about the hard years in South Central, and how little G used to draw blueprints on napkins with crayons. Graham nodded solemnly as if he remembered. As if he hadn't grown up in a 2-bedroom fixer-upper in Kentucky with a backyard full of dandelions and my sewing table next to the kitchen sink. I sat there until the waitress cleared her throat. "Ma'am," she said gently, "we're about to switch to dinner service." That's when I realized my iced tea had melted down to water, and my thighs were numb from how tightly I'd been clutching the quilt. I left a 5 on the table and stepped out into the evening. The sun was going down now, a pink haze across the hills. The mansion glowed in the distance like it had swallowed the day and was now digesting the light. And inside it was my son, walking through hallways he built on a story that wasn't mine. On a story that erased me. I went back to the small rental I'd booked. A dusty Airbnb over a garage unit in Sherman Oaks. The host had left a scented candle on the nightstand called Ocean Mist. It smelled like detergent and despair. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I took out the quilt and laid it across the bed. Every piece had a memory. I traced each square, each thread, each patch of fabric like it was a relic. And all I could think was, he called her Mama. He buried me. He didn't just forget me. He killed me off with a disease I never had, in a lie that was now captured on film for the whole world to admire. And the world would admire it. People eat that story up. The poor black boy rescued by a strong, loving woman after losing his white mother to tragedy. It's the kind of tale that wins awards, that gets turned into books and morning show interviews and think pieces about the power of community. But it wasn't true. I was still here. Still breathing. Still holding the pieces of his past. Still remembering. That's when the bitterness gave way to something colder. Resolve. I opened my phone, found his social media pages. Everything was branded. Graham Devereux, the architect of soul. His bio talked about weaving culture and memory into modern design. There was even a hashtag. Hashtag raised by Monica. I scrolled through pictures of him and Monica at events, ribbon cuttings, charity galas. In one, she wore the gold locket I gave him on his 16th birthday. The one with "for all the blueprints of your dreams" etched inside. He'd given it to her. Of course he had. I clicked off the screen and stared at the ceiling. That cheap candle flickered on the nightstand like it was mocking me. The next morning I checked out early and booked a bus ticket home. 3 days later, back in Kentucky, I unlocked the trunk in my bedroom closet. It hadn't been touched in years. Inside were things that no one had seen in over a decade: Graham's report cards, his drawings, notes he wrote to me in crayon, birthday cards, a shoebox full of VHS tapes, a tiny pair of sneakers, and beneath it all a letter. His first from college. He signed it. "Love you always, Mom. I miss home." That was the real boy. Before branding. Before the cameras. Before Monica. Before he decided I wasn't pretty enough to fit his story. I sat on the floor surrounded by artifacts of the life he'd buried, and I felt something settle in my chest. Not sadness, not rage. Purpose. He told the world I died. Now I was going to show them what he buried. And who he became in the process. Back home, the quiet had a different kind of weight. Not the lonely kind I'd carried all those years since Graham stopped calling. No, this quiet had edges now. Purpose. Focus. I sat at my sewing table, the one Graham used to nap under when he was little, and I placed the quilt across it. The same quilt he'd rejected like an outdated relic. But now I didn't look at it like a gift. I looked at it like evidence. Every square told a truth. And his lies had wrapped themselves around the world like velvet ropes. I opened the closet and took down the old cedar chest. It hadn't been touched in years, and the scent of lemon oil still clung to its lid. Inside were the things I'd kept, not because they were important to anyone else, but because they were pieces of me, of him, of us. The first item I pulled out was the Halloween VHS tape. He was 6, dressed as a cardboard robot I'd made from diaper boxes and silver duct tape. The tape was grainy, the audio muffled, but you could still hear me behind the camera laughing. Say trick or treat, baby. And him, that lisp still in his voice, yelling, twick or tweet. Next, a stack of drawings. Child Graham loved floor plans. He used to trace the outlines of our trailer, and then redesign it with turrets and trapdoors and skylights. At 10, he'd drawn our house with a second floor, a glass greenhouse on top. I remembered thinking, he's going to build something bigger than this town. Then came the letters. Folded in quarters, stuffed into cheap envelopes with forever stamps. I made the dean's list again. You were right about architecture 201, it's brutal. Monica keeps calling. I know she means well, but I wish she'd back off. I paused. That name. She'd been there even then. Back when she was just his godmother's old friend who lived in LA, back when I still had the title of mother. I went deeper. Dr. Bill's. A kindergarten certificate. A Polaroid of Graham in the driveway with chalk-stained jeans and a popsicle smile. His high school diploma, the corner still stained from when I cried holding it. I spread it all across the bed like a forensic table. This wasn't just nostalgia anymore. This was evidence of life. My life. His life. The one he was pretending didn't exist. I picked up the locket. Empty. The picture of me and him on the porch swing had faded into nothing. He'd taken it out or maybe thrown it away. And that's when something shifted. I wasn't just heartbroken anymore. I was pissed. He didn't just lie about me. He used that lie to build his brand. He turned our real struggle into a story about someone else's grace. Monica wasn't the one who made grilled cheese at midnight when his stomach hurt. She wasn't the one who found him crying after he broke his first model in college. She wasn't the one who worked through arthritis to send him care packages when he couldn't afford groceries. I was. And now he wore her memory like it was his own. But here's the thing about lies, they have seams. And seams come undone if you pull the right thread. I didn't know where to start, but I knew someone who might. Victor Tran. We met 6 years ago at a church potluck. He was passing through town, a wiry Vietnamese man with a cane, a scar on his lip, and a laptop that looked like it had been through war. He'd told me once, over pecan pie, that he used to work in corporate security, but after his daughter got involved with a cult and disappeared, he started chasing liars for a living. Now he helped people unravel stories too neat to be true. It took me a day to find his number. Ruth Devereux, he said after a pause. Haven't heard from you in years. I need to hire you. Who hurt you? My son. He didn't laugh. He just said, I'm listening. I told him everything. The quilt. The gate. The cameras. Monica. The cancer lie. When I finished, there was a long silence on the line. Then, you still got those tapes? All of them. Good. Stories can be rewritten. But evidence? That's stubborn. We made a plan. I'd scan every document. Mail him the VHS tapes. He'd start digging into Monica's background, her employment history, legal records, social media before the brand deals. I'd collect everything from Graham's early life that could contradict his fairy tale. I didn't tell Victor what I wanted yet. I wasn't sure myself. But I knew this much. I didn't just want to be remembered. I wanted the world to know what he did. And I wanted him to feel it when the mask fell off. By the end of the week, I'd turned my guest room into an archive. Files labeled by year. Folders named by memory. Video clips spliced and uploaded. My hands hurt every night from the scanning and sorting, but the ache felt good. Felt earned. Victor called 2 days later. His voice was calm, but I knew that tone. It meant something was off. Your Monica, he said, is not who she says she is. What do you mean? She's got aliases. 4 of them. She's changed her name twice legally. I'm still piecing it together, but Ruth, she's done this before. Done what? Pretended to be someone's mother. My throat went dry. She conned a jewelry CEO in 2014. Claimed to be his estranged birth mom. Helped boost his image. Got caught in a blackmail scandal, then disappeared. Paid off. Quietly. My fingers curled around the edge of the table. And now, she's got power of attorney over one of Graham's shell companies. Silence. Ruth, Victor said gently. You ready for this? I looked at the quilt. No, I whispered. But I've been quiet long enough. There's a silence that settles in your chest when you realize the story you thought you were living was a costume someone else wore to applause. That's how I felt when Victor sent me the file. A single email. Subject line, she's done this before. Inside were 5 PDF attachments and a Dropbox link. And just like that, the woman my son called Mama became something else entirely. A ghost. A grifter. A professional mother for hire. Monica didn't just step in when I supposedly died. She'd made a living stepping in, shaping herself into the kind of matriarch the world wanted to believe in. The woman you could place next to a successful black man and say, see? That's why he made it. The visual narrative. The warmth. The backstory. All scripted. All sold. Her last performance was for a luxury jewelry CEO, Latrell Owens. She'd shown up at a charity gala he was speaking at, claiming to be his estranged mother who'd been too ashamed to find him earlier. Played the long-lost reunion angle. It worked. She moved in, gave interviews, posted tearful photos on Instagram holding the pendant he supposedly gave her as a symbol of forgiveness. 6 months later, someone leaked DMs of her blackmailing him. Claimed she had dirt on how his startup funding really came through, something about offshore accounts. Monica disappeared just before the police could question her. Rumor is she was paid to vanish. And now she was with my son. On his arm. In his mansion. In his interviews. With power of attorney over one of his shell companies. Victor walked me through the documents. Emails scraped from unlisted servers. Scrubbed LinkedIn profiles. Court filings from 3 states. He even found a deleted blog Monica ran under an alias back in 2011, filled with self-help platitudes and oddly specific stories that didn't line up with anything she'd ever publicly claimed. I read every word. I read them the way a surgeon studies a tumor. I don't understand, I said to Victor on our 3rd phone call that week. What does she get out of this now? Graham already has a brand. A career. Victor's voice was slow, like he was chewing on something bitter. She's got her claws in deeper than you think. He might not just be her mark. He could be her partner. No, I said too fast. But the truth sat with me through the night. Like a second shadow in the room. Because deep down I knew Victor wasn't wrong. Graham wasn't dumb. He was ambitious. Calculating. He'd always known how to position himself in a room. He used to practice speeches in front of the mirror when he was 16, telling me, "It's not what you say, Mom. It's how you look saying it." And maybe I should have listened closer. Victor sent me one last file, Monica's recent tax filings. She listed herself as a creative consultant. But what she really was an architect too. An architect of fiction. Together, they'd built a mansion made of soft lies and beautiful lighting. And every brick they used was stolen from my life. That was the part that hurt most. Not just the erasure. The theft. They took my sacrifices, my letters, my words, my meals, my sleepless nights, and fed them into a machine that spit out Monica in a pearl necklace, calling my boy G. I sat with that pain for 3 days. Didn't leave the house. Didn't sew. Didn't eat more than a cup of soup and a slice of toast. And then I remembered what my mother used to say when a seam ripped on something you'd worked too long on. If it tears, baby, it means the fabric was weak. But you? You ain't made of fabric. I called Victor. "I'm ready," I said. "For what?" "To pull the threads." He hesitated. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, standing in my little kitchen with the busted tile and the smell of old cinnamon in the air. "I'm going to show the world the real story. But not as me. I'm going to let her confess." Victor paused. "You want to bait her?" "I want to break her script." We got to work. Victor crafted a fake identity. An anonymous collector of Americana artifacts who specialized in stories of forgotten maternal figures. A woman named Eleanor Vaughn, wealthy, eccentric, based out of a Charleston estate. She had a fictional website, social media accounts, and a private collection of historical quilts, letters, and heirlooms. Victor even got a retired Broadway actress he knew to record a voicemail line for her. Then we made the offer. $500,000 to Monica for an exclusive interview and personal testimonial about her journey raising a future icon against the odds. The kind of content that could be used in books, exhibits, branded projects. We emailed her directly. Within 24 hours, she replied. Her message was short but revealing. "I think we can come to an arrangement. Graham's story is special, and I'd love for it to be told properly. I'm sure he'll understand." Victor called me immediately. "She's going to betray him," he said. "You sure you want to watch that happen?" "Yes," I said. "Because he betrayed me first." We set the date. The interview would take place over Zoom, recorded under NDA with Eleanor, appearing only as a voice, her camera off. Victor would handle the tech. I would watch silently from the background, anonymous, unseen. The bait was set. Now all we had to do was wait for Monica to perform. But what she didn't know, what he didn't know, was that every word she said would be broadcast far beyond any collector's archive. Because when the time came, I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to dismantle them, one stitch at a time. I watched Monica log into the Zoom call wearing a coral silk blouse and a smile she'd clearly practiced. Her hair was pulled into a loose chignon, just the right amount of refined but relatable. Behind her, a curated backdrop, shelf of award-winning books, a framed photograph of her and Graham at some gala, and a small vase of lilies. She had learned how to sell warmth. She didn't know the woman on the other end, Eleanor Vaughn, was just a voice, piped through a filter, reading from a script Victor and I wrote together. But Monica didn't hesitate. As soon as Eleanor thanked her for her time and offered a generous-sounding line about compensating truth, Monica eased into her performance like slipping into a velvet robe. "Oh, I've never told the full story publicly," she said, her voice low, almost bashful. "But when someone offers you the space to be seen, well, it feels sacred." Sacred. My God. She went on. She spoke about Graham's early trauma, losing his biological mother to cancer at 11. How he came to me like a broken bird. She claimed they met at church, that he cried the first time she made him collard greens. I sat in my chair, one hand clenched tight around a mug of cold tea, the other gripping the armrest until the wood creaked. Victor watched too, eyes flicking across screens, capturing everything. "He was always gifted," Monica continued, "but he needed someone to believe in him, to mother him, not just feed and clothe him but teach him who he really was. And that's what I did. I became that mirror." She was calm, controlled, her words polished like glass, until Eleanor asked the right question. So, just to clarify, Graham was 11 when his mother passed. And that's when you stepped in? Yes, Monica replied without hesitation. Victor cut in, barely audible in my ear through our side channel. She just sealed it, he said. She locked in the lie. And then Monica leaned forward. But I'll be honest. He didn't want to talk about his real mother. I remember early on he said, she wasn't camera material. Think he was ashamed. She lived in some dusty little town, barely got by. He said she made quilts like a pioneer. Said she'd embarrass him on screen. The laugh she gave after that? That was the nail in her coffin. Because in that moment, I knew she wasn't just repeating Graham's story. She believed it. Owned it. She thought this version of his life was hers to manipulate. And that made her dangerous. The call lasted 42 minutes. We had it all. The video. The audio. The signed agreement. The release waiver she clicked without reading. She thought she just earned $500,000 for telling the sob story of a boy she'd never raised. But what she really did was set a torch to the lie they built. The next few days were a blur of planning. Victor and I cut the footage down to 5 damning minutes. Monica's confession crystal clear, followed by a montage of photos and video from my archive. Graham at 10 hugging me at his birthday. Graham at 14 sitting at the kitchen table with a math book and me beside him. Graham at 17 in his cap and gown, with my arms wrapped around him. We included the VS footage. Me sewing his Halloween costume while he twirled around the living room shouting, "My mama made this." The final shot was the quilt. Full screen. Then a black card with white text. The woman who raised me. Below it, #ThreadbareTruth. We scheduled the video's release to coincide with the week Graham was being considered for the prestigious Danish Architectural Award, the Queen's Design Laureate, the kind of honor that elevates a career from celebrity to historical. And we didn't stop with the video. Victor had been gathering files, 15 gigabytes of them, tax records, corporate filings, private emails between Graham and his college admissions consultant that revealed ghostwritten essays, invoices for forged documents used to secure permits for one of his early commissions. We put it all in a secure drive and composed a single anonymous email addressed to 3 major news outlets, 2 former investors, and the Queen's Foundation Selection Committee. The subject line was simple: before you crown a liar. The night before the drop, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window in my small Kentucky home, the hum of the sewing machine beside me. I wasn't stitching anything new. I just let it run under my hand, the way a pianist might tap keys to remember who they are. I thought about the years I spent waiting for a call, a letter, a crumb. I thought about the quilt, about how he'd refused to even touch it. And now it would be the last thread in the story he tried to erase. At 9 a.m. Pacific time, we launched the video. By 9:32 it had 17,000 views. By noon Monica's name was trending. By 2 p.m. Graham's publicist posted a cryptic statement about mischaracterizations and family complexity. By 5 p.m. his book tour was cancelled. The Danish committee released a statement the next morning. The nomination of Mr. Graham Devereux has been formally withdrawn pending a full ethics review. 3 of his investors pulled out by the weekend. By Monday, Variety had published an exposé titled "The Golden Brand Built on a Lie." They used our hashtag #ThreadbareTruth. I didn't post anything. Didn't comment. Didn't claim the story. I just watched. Watched as the empire he built on fiction trembled. And one by one, the lights went out. When you live your life around stitching, you learn a thing or two about tension. Too loose and the seams unravel. Too tight and the fabric puckers until it splits. That was Monica now, puckering. She was cracking around the edges. The day after the video dropped, Victor intercepted a frantic email from her burner account. The subject line read, "This wasn't supposed to go public." She was angry and scared. Not because she'd been caught, but because she'd been caught alone. According to Victor, she'd called Graham 6 times in a row that morning. He didn't answer. She left messages. Panicked ones. Her voice didn't sound like silk anymore. It sounded like someone peeling wallpaper off a burning wall. She must have thought he'd protect her. But rats don't cover each other when the ship's going under. By that night, we had screenshots from her private social media messages. She was trying to clarify the narrative with anyone who might still be listening. Phrases like selective editing, emotional confusion, and taken out of context started making the rounds. She even released a statement saying she had no knowledge of Ruth Devereux's whereabouts, and that Graham's emotional journey was deeply personal and subjective. She called me a figure of myth, a fragment of memory, a fabricated relic. That was the last stitch I needed to pull. So I did. I logged into a new account, one no one could trace to me, and posted a second video. Short, silent, a single shot, the quilt, laid out flat on my sewing table, every square visible, every patch, every story. Then close up on one square missing from the bottom right corner. A simple linen panel. Underneath it, a handwritten note, sewn into the underside. The camera zoomed in as the note was unfolded. It read, "I gave you everything, and you sold it for applause." That video was barely 30 seconds. No music, no voiceover. It spread faster than the first. Within hours, Twitter was ablaze with theories. Articles popped up dissecting the meaning of the quilt, the symbolism of the missing square. Art blogs called it the anti-branding artifact. One critic said it was the most haunting cultural indictment of performative motherhood in modern media. Meanwhile, Monica went underground. She deleted 3 social media profiles. Her nonprofit site went offline. The consulting business she'd listed on her tax returns was scrubbed clean. We couldn't even find her IP logs after that. Victor said she might have hopped state lines. Graham, though? He couldn't disappear. Not from the media. Not from the lawsuits. Not from the banks. Within a week, his name was blacklisted from 3 architecture firms. His online masterclass was pulled. The Queen's Foundation publicly rescinded his invitation and cited inconsistencies in character background. But the part that caught me by surprise? The silence from him. Not a call. Not a letter. Not a denial. Not even one of those fake apologies celebrities give when they're forced to. No, I was misled. No, I didn't know. No, this is hard for me too. Nothing. Just silence. Maybe he was waiting for things to blow over. Maybe he thought if he laid low long enough, the storm would pass. But storms don't pass when the roof's been ripped off. Victor called me 4 nights later. "She's surfaced," he said. "Monica. Or whatever her name is now." "Where?" "Trying to sell the power of attorney rights." My breath caught. To what? One of Graham's dummy core. The one tied to that Sustainable Spaces design portfolio. She wants out. Bad. I sat with that for a moment. "She's desperate," I said. "Desperate enough to talk again." I stood up from the kitchen table. My back cracked. My hands ached. But my focus was clear. "We get her talking," I said. "We own everything." Victor used the same Eleanor Vaughn profile to reach out again. This time no bait and switch. No half-truths. Just cash. $500,000 in cryptocurrency. We offered. For exclusive rights to your story unedited. No cuts. No questions asked. She took the bait. We met on encrypted video, Victor handling the tech. I didn't speak. Just watched from a blank screen. Monica appeared wearing a hoodie, her face less painted now. Older. Tired. She looked like someone who'd seen too many doors close in too short a time. Her voice, though, was steady. She told it all. How she met Graham through a mutual contact in LA. Someone in branding who suggested he humanize his image. How they initially planned to say she was his mentor, but the mother angle played better. How she was offered a retainer fee. How the documentary deals started rolling in. How she eventually earned power of attorney over one of his holding companies. As a sign of trust, she said. She laughed bitterly. He never wanted his real mom involved. Said she didn't fit the image. Said she'd embarrass him if people saw how podunk she was. Said she made quilts like some poor grandma on a farm. I froze. Again with the quilt. Hell, I almost felt bad, Monica said, looking down. But then I saw the numbers. And let's be real. Who's gonna believe a woman in Kentucky with a sewing machine over an architect on TV? She looked up. I guess now we know. Victor saved the call, encrypted it, and stored it in 3 places. We didn't post it yet. We didn't need to. The video existed. And that alone was enough to break every inch of their scheme. We had the trap. We had the confession. And now we had the power. When the trap finally snapped shut, it didn't make a sound. Didn't need to. The weight of it, the sheer force of accumulated lies, was loud enough in its unraveling. Monica's confession stayed sealed, tucked away on Victor's encrypted drives. We didn't have to publish it. Not yet. The first video had already been weaponized by the media. But what we had now, that was insurance. That was the hammer in a glass case labeled in case of more lies. And Graham, he was still trying to spin. His PR team posted a note on Instagram 3 days after the quilt video went viral. It was one of those artful non-apologies dressed in soft pastels. I'm a product of many influences. Grief is complicated. Sometimes we choose stories that help us cope. Cope. He used that word like it was a bandage over a bullet wound. But the public wasn't buying it anymore. Because now, the narrative wasn't just about a mother erased. It was about deception. About calculated branding. About a man who built an empire off an emotional fiction, and then profited from it like a corporation sells bottled water. And the fallout? Oh, it came fast. The Queen's Design Laureate Committee didn't just rescind his nomination. They issued a rare public rebuke. The award represents not just architectural excellence, but personal integrity. Mr. Devereux has failed to meet that standard. That one statement turned corporate phones ice cold. 3 of Graham's sponsors pulled out the next day. Volusia, the luxury home goods company that featured him in their Structures of Resilience campaign, scrubbed his face from their website and deleted the entire short documentary. The one where Monica said I died of cancer when he was 11? Gone. No archive. No trace. Like it never existed. Then came the lawsuit. One of his earliest investors, a woman named Darla Worthington, filed a civil complaint for fraud citing misrepresentation of brand values, falsified origin stories, and emotional manipulation of equity stakeholders. That's when the vultures really started circling. Business Insider ran a piece titled "The Architect Who Built His Career on a Lie." The New York Times followed up with a full-page Sunday editorial called "Erasing Mothers: The Price of a Marketable Past." My name wasn't in either article, but my story was. A woman erased. A son who replaced her. A quilt that told the truth. Meanwhile, Monica was a ghost. She disappeared like smoke in a closed room. Victor traced her to a prepaid rental in Tempe, Arizona, under the name Sharon Ewell. But that trail went cold fast. She'd taken what she could and vanished again. That left Graham to face the music alone. And oh, how quiet it got around him. His assistants quit. His social media managers stopped posting. Clients paused projects. One by one, the pillars of his empire gave out, and the marble facade began to crumble. And through it all I stayed silent. No interviews. No public statements. No appearances. Not because I didn't want to speak, but because silence, when wielded right, is a scalpel. Let the world speak for me. Let the quilt do the talking. Then 1 week later a package arrived at my door. No return address. Inside, a letter. I sat down at the kitchen table, hands trembling just a little. The envelope was thick. Real paper. Not some glossy publicist-issued stationery. Just my name on the front, Ruth. I unfolded it. His handwriting hadn't changed much. Still slanted left. Still too tight, like he was afraid of running out of space. Mom, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Every draft I wrote felt like a press release, and I know you'd see right through that. I'm sorry. For all of it. For the gate. For the lies. For pretending you didn't exist. I thought I had to create something bigger than the truth in order to matter. And I guess I convinced myself that if I just kept building, I'd outrun the past. But you were never the past. You were always the foundation. I'm broke now. Monica's gone. Took the last one. 2 million. I signed papers I didn't read because I was too proud to admit I needed help. And now I'm sitting in an empty house thinking about quilts. If you can forgive me, or if you ever want to talk, please write back. Love, Graham. I read it twice. Then I folded it neatly and placed it beside the final thing in the box. Check. Blank. Signed. He'd left the amount open. Like he thought money could patch this. I didn't cash it. Instead, I mailed something back the next morning. The quilt. Folded tight. Packed carefully. delivered via priority mail with the tracking number. But I left one square missing. The linen square from the bottom right corner, the one with the note. I kept that, because some things aren't meant to be forgiven. Some things aren't meant to be bought. Sometimes the best kind of justice isn't explosive. It's quiet, measured, permanent. The kind that lives in fabric. The kind that reminds a man every time he opens the box. You had a mother, and you chose applause instead. The envelope arrived without fanfare. No postmark I recognized. No return address. No stamp design that stood out. Just a plain cream envelope in my mailbox, slipped between a dentist appointment reminder and a coupon for mulch. The kind of letter that could disappear if the wind blew hard enough. But I knew who it was from before I even opened it. The handwriting. The way he still curled the bottom of his G's like they were ashamed to stand straight. I brought it inside, sat down at the kitchen table, and stared at it for a long while. The quilt he once rejected was gone now, mailed back to him days earlier. Folded neatly. Waited with silence. One square missing. That was no accident, and he'd know it. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No apology this time. Just a question. Mom, why that square? That was it. No explanation. No tears. No grand confession. Just that question. I folded the letter slowly, tucked it back inside the envelope and set it on the counter. I didn't answer. Not with words. Some truths don't come with an instruction manual. And some sons have to sit in the silence they built. Instead, I pulled out the square. The missing one. It was the linen scrap from the shirt he wore the first time he said he hated me. He was 17, and it was the week his college applications were due. He'd spent the night arguing on the phone with a girl he loved more than he understood. When I asked him to take out the trash, he snapped. Told me I didn't get it. That I didn't know what pressure meant. That I was just a woman who sewed stuff. I remember the exact phrase. God, you don't matter. You're not part of the future I want. It wasn't the first time we fought, but it was the first time I didn't recognize him. The way his voice landed like a slap, and he walked away without looking back. I didn't cry that night. I just folded the shirt, stored it in the cedar chest, and promised myself I wouldn't use it in any quilt. Not ever. But years later, when I started stitching that last quilt, the one I brought to his gate, I added it anyway. Not to forgive. Not to forget. To remember. Because motherhood isn't always gentle. It's not all birthday cakes and bedtime stories. Sometimes it's standing on a porch holding a trash bag, while your son tells you you're in the way, and still choosing to love him, still choosing to sew his story into the one you're making. That's what that square was. A reckoning. And he didn't deserve it anymore. So I kept it. Sewed a note into its back, small and hand-stitched, like a whisper only fabric could hold. I gave you everything. And you sold it for applause. That square now lives in a glass case. But I'll get to that later. For now, let's talk about what happened next. After the scandal blew over, after the lawsuit settled and the press moved on, I donated the quilt to a small exhibit launching in Chicago, a museum dedicated to American storytelling through textiles. They titled the show Mothers Who Were Erased. I didn't attend the opening. I didn't want to be seen. But I mailed them everything they asked for: photos, tapes, letters, receipts. Proof. Not because I needed credit, but because I wanted context. People love a neat ending. They want the son to cry, the mother to forgive, the villain to apologize. But real life is more stitched than screenplay. And I was done performing grace for people who never earned it. The exhibit became something else entirely. It toured Chicago, then Baltimore. Then Atlanta. People showed up. They read the letters. Watched the VHS footage of Graham twirling in his robot costume while I laughed off camera. They saw the handmade labels beneath each square of the quilt. His first tooth. Pneumonia at 4. The shirt he hated but I loved. And then they came to the last panel. The blank one. A single linen square framed beside the quilt. Beneath it, a printed placard with my note. I gave you everything. And you sold it for applause. People didn't ask questions. They just stood there. Some cried. Some wrote letters on the guestbook wall, messages to their own mothers, their own ghosts, their own regrets. I read every one. A woman in New Orleans wrote, My son tells people he was raised by his coach. I changed his diapers in a homeless shelter. A man in Detroit. My daughter erased me from her wedding photos. Said I wasn't aesthetic enough. A teenage girl in Portland. I ran away last year. My mom's not perfect, but she tried. I'm going home. I didn't need to hear from Graham anymore. The world had read the truth, felt it in fabric, understood it without press releases or hashtags. And that was enough. Still, once in a while letters came. From him. Always unsigned. Always with no return address. The handwriting changed. Got shakier. More rushed. But the message was always the same. Are you still angry? Do you think I meant it? Would you ever want to talk? I never answered. Not because I hated him, but because he needed to sit with silence. Not as punishment, as education. Because mothers aren't myths. We are not soft-focus memories or stepping stones or props for success stories. We are the architects. And when you erase us, when you fabricate fiction and sell it as resilience, you build your empire on a fault line. And eventually it cracks. I never thought a quilt could hang on a museum wall like it belonged there. But it did. It didn't look out of place. Didn't look poor or humble or old. It looked powerful. Like it had teeth. Like it knew something the rest of the room didn't. And maybe it did. They mounted it high on a dark canvas wall. Soft lighting from above casting shadows into the seams. Each square was accompanied by a small placard, printed in clean serif font. First Halloween. His father's funeral tie. Laundry day at age 10. His rejected college essay in pieces. They didn't just frame the object, they framed the story. My story. The story he tried to bury beneath marble countertops and designer suits and televised lies. The exhibit was called Mothers Who Were Erased. It opened quietly, tucked into a corner wing of a Chicago textile museum, and for a week barely anyone noticed. Then a journalist from The Atlantic wrote a piece. The quilt that ruined a legacy. After that, everything changed. Crowds came. Not in stampedes but steadily. Women, men, grandparents, children with wide eyes and quiet voices. People stared longer than usual. They didn't scroll or snap selfies or shuffle past. They stood. They read. They remembered. One installation held nothing but the missing square. The linen piece from Graham's teenage shirt, the square I kept. They mounted it behind glass. Folded neatly. Still stitched on the inside with the note, I gave you everything. And you sold it for applause. That became the exhibit's unofficial tagline. It was printed on posters, printed in catalogs, whispered in galleries. People started mailing in their own fragments. Baby shoes, school photos, crumpled poems their children left behind. The museum had to open a side room to display them. Letters poured in. A curator told me they had to create a full-time position just to read, categorize, and respond to all the stories. Most were private. A few were published. Anonymous testimonials from mothers, fathers, guardians who had been scrubbed out of someone else's narrative for convenience. I didn't give interviews. Didn't let them use my full name. Only Ruth D. No press, no profiles, no think pieces about reconciliation. Because I wasn't there for closure. I was there for presence. And presence doesn't always need a voice. Sometimes it just needs a shadow in the room. Then came the request from Denmark. A design student, part of a collective that had boycotted the Queen's Award Committee for their former support of Graham, asked for permission to display the quilt digitally in a new installation on archival justice. They called the series Reclaimed Threads. I gave them permission with one condition: they had to include all the metadata. The letters, the tapes, the photographs, not just the art, the evidence. Don't turn it into something pretty, I told the student over the phone. It's not. It's honest. She paused, then replied, I think that's what scares people most. That same week, something else happened. I received a message from a museum in San Francisco. They wanted to license the quilt and create an interactive audio experience. Visitors could press a button and hear excerpts from letters Graham had written me over the years. His childhood voice reading his own words. Love you, Mom. Thank you for the cookies. You're the reason I try so hard. I agreed, but asked to remain uncredited. Let the audience wonder. Let them ask questions. Let them piece the story together like a mystery sewn with invisible thread. Still, not all things stayed hidden. Because 2 months after the Chicago exhibit opened, I received a package from a law firm. Inside, a letter from Graham's estate lawyer. He was being sued again by a former partner for breach of contract. The lawyer asked if I'd be willing to testify about Monica's confession and the forged business agreements she'd made while holding power of attorney. He said my witness statement could help redeem some of Mr. Devereux's image in the eyes of the court. I didn't respond, not because I wanted revenge, but because redemption isn't something you outsource, something you earn. And Graham hadn't even tried. Still, his story was out there, unraveling. People now referred to him as a case study, a cautionary tale, the architect who redesigned his own past. He became an ethics lecturer in business schools. His book was pulled from shelves, then reissued 2 years later with a foreword titled, The Myth of Merit. The only mention of Monica was in a footnote. Meanwhile, the quilt kept touring. Seattle, Toronto, Philadelphia. People waited in line to see it. And I stayed home. Kentucky wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. My porch still creaked. My knees still ached. My sewing table still sat in the same corner, with loose threads in a mason jar beside it. One morning I received a photo from the curator in Philadelphia. It showed a young woman kneeling in front of the quilt, her hand pressed to the glass where the linen square once sat. She was crying. Beneath the photo was a message. My mother died before I could say I was sorry. This helped. That was when I understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't just about Graham anymore. This was about all of us. The mothers whose stories didn't fit the spotlight. The ones who were trimmed out of the frame. The ones whose sacrifices weren't aesthetic enough for the narrative. We weren't just background. We were the foundation. And now we were framed in truth. Not as saints, but as survivors. There's a kind of silence that doesn't ache. Not like loneliness. Not like abandonment. It's the kind that settles in when you've put everything back where it belongs. When you've stopped waiting for someone to fill the room. That's the kind of silence I live with now. I don't have a mansion. Never wanted one. I rent a modest 2-bedroom house near the edge of a Kentucky town too small to impress, too big to vanish in. The porch sags. The floors creak. But it's mine. Every Sunday afternoon, I teach a sewing class at the local women's shelter. It started small. Just me and 3 women around a folding table. One of them, Paula, had never touched a sewing machine in her life. Said she was afraid of breaking the thread. I told her breaking things was the first step to learning how to fix them. Now we've got 12 women. We make everything: clothes, bags, comforters, pillows. Some of them sell their work online now. One of them, Tanya, even got featured in a local fair exhibit. I stitched her label myself. Made with fight. They call me Mama R. I never asked them to. It just started. One night after class, a girl no older than 16, scar on her chin, arms wrapped tight around herself like armor, stayed behind. She didn't say much at first. Just watched me clean up. Then she whispered, "I don't know what a mom's supposed to be." She looked down, fingers twitching. "But I think it's this." She reached out, hugged me so fast I didn't even have time to breathe. And when I did, I smiled. Not the kind you give to strangers or cameras. The kind you earn. The kind that stitches something new into the space that once held grief. I still think about Graham. Not every day, but often enough. I wonder what his life looks like now. What's left of it? Victor sent me an update a few months ago. He said Graham had moved to Santa Fe, renting a room in a subdivided adobe house. No housekeepers, no marble counters, no cameras. The TV shows had dried up. The book royalties were frozen. The lawsuits were still echoing through courts like the ghost of a bell rung too hard. He started designing dog houses. Not a joke. Custom-built, luxury dog houses. Tiny mansions for Pomeranians and poodles. It paid just enough to keep the lights on. One day, Victor told me, Graham saw a little boy outside a school wearing a shirt with the same pattern as one of the quilt squares from his childhood. The dinosaur print. From his favorite pajamas when he was 5. Turns out, one of the nonprofits I helped fund with the museum's licensing proceeds had launched a children's clothing line. All replicas of old patterns donated by anonymous American seamstresses. Every piece came with a tag. Reclaimed threads. From forgotten hands. He stood there a long time, Victor said. Just watching. Didn't say a word. Didn't take a photo. Didn't approach the boy. Just stood there like he was staring at a ghost in daylight. Think he knew. I think he felt it, that stitch of recognition, that thread connecting the image he tried to erase to the truth that refused to die. You can fake a lot of things in this world. But not fabric. Not the kind of hands that made you. Not the kind of love that never asked for applause. I never wrote him back. Not once. But I did something else. I took the original linen square, the one with the note, and turned it into an NFT. Not because I care about cryptocurrency. I don't know a damn thing about it, to be honest. But Victor said it was digitally permanent. Something that couldn't be altered or stolen or burned. We called it the Forgotten Mother. Then we did something even colder. We sold copies of it. One for each of Graham's former investors, sponsors, and publishers. 50 in total. All proceeds went to a fund for mothers, rebuilding their lives after abandonment. No names. No credit. Just support. Justice, if you want to call it that. Not loud. But permanent. The room Graham lives in now? Victor described it. Small. Beige. No wall art. A mattress on the floor. A desk with claw marks from a previous tenant's cat. He cooks instant noodles. Gets paid per blueprint. Wears the same hoodie in every video call. He stopped cutting his hair. No more interviews. No more G. Just Graham. The boy I raised. The man he became. And the empty chair at the edge of his life where I used to sit. He made that space. He keeps it empty. And me? I filled mine. With thread. With stories. With other women's daughters and granddaughters and strangers who now call me something sacred. Mama. Ruth. The one who was never gone. Just waiting to be remembered. And now finally never forgotten.